This is the Hope Not Nope podcast,
where we answer your questions and share inspirational stories to fill your soul with hope.
Our mission is to empower hope to those who have been plagued by nope.
I'm Dr. Dylan Caswell.
And I'm Brandy.
And we're here to bring you out of the nope and into hope.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Hope Not Nope podcast. We are so excited that you are here for another episode. I am excited to share with you one of my hope stories from this past week. We celebrated the 4th of July, and it was a lot of fun and very hot here in central New York. And so it was really great. But Dylan and I went to a local beach reservoir and just kind of spent the day relaxing and soaking in the sunshine after we had done a very intense 60-minute workout. And so we were really hot, really sweaty. Then we went to the beach, and there was this moment when we were at the beach where someone lost one of their kids. And it was this beautiful moment where, like, seeing the lifeguards dive in, call everyone out of the water, dive in, and just the way that they had the structure set and just trying to find this kid, right? Luckily, a spoiler alert, the kid was fine. The kid was in the sand. So no one got hurt by any means. But it was this beautiful opportunity of life matters and life is so important. And my favorite part of that whole thing was watching the way that the lifeguards started to dive to search for the kids. And then one lifeguard actually got all the adults to start basically making a human chain around the perimeter of the swimming area. And the reason why that impacted me so much and why I wanted to share it with you as listeners was that we are in this together. If a life is at stake, you don't just kind of go, oh well, but like everybody wants to be involved to care for that life. And, you know, this was a child's life in water. So obviously this is a dangerous situation, but it really brought me to a place of reflecting of, do I care for the person in the grocery store? Do I show kindness to the person at the toll booth? Things like that, you know, every person that we encounter throughout the day matters. And so that hope story of, you know, watching people care for not just that one life, but then everybody wanting to really get around it and support it and help find this person really just inspired me to how can I as an individual, but then also maybe my group of people, my friends, come together and care for other people. And so I want to share that hope story with you today. And I hope that it inspires you to maybe be more intentional with the people in your life or even a stranger in your life and really, really value their life today. So now I'm going to ask Dylan, what inspired you this past week? If you want, you can share one, you can share two, but share us a little bit of hope that inspired you throughout the week.
Absolutely. So I have a few, and I want to kind of bounce off of what you were saying that at the beach and these lifeguards. And these lifeguards, they're 16, 17-year-old individuals that within a minute had found this kid. Mm-hmm. That does not happen without putting the reps in for practice. They have put in the reps that allowed that moment to be able to save this person's life. So looking at the opportunity to serve other people, it's all about the reps that you've built up. Mm-hmm. So as Brandy's saying, start building up those reps today. So I have two hope stories, maybe three. I'll try to make it two.
Just spread the hope.
We'll just spread the hope. So the 4th of July weekend, it's an important weekend for our families. We have a lot of birthdays on both our sides of the family. Mm-hmm. I think so often we hear this statistic of the youth is not active. Their 50% is overweight. Mm. So my nephew had his birthday, turned 14 years old, and he asked to get squat stands for his birthday and protein powder in a blender bottle because he wants to start working out. So I don't know, that just made me super excited and hopeful of the next generation and how important fitness is, that 14-year-old saying, can I get squat stands for my birthday? And then for Christmas, can I get a new barbell and new weights? Like, that was awesome.
That's so awesome.
My other hope highlight from the past weekend was we go up to another kind of hidden gym in Syracuse to watch fireworks. And there was no village that was putting on fireworks on the night of 4th of July that we're aware of. So we go up to this spot just where we get a whole outlook of the city. And it's just people setting off fireworks from their own yards. Mm-hmm. Not one of these houses talked to the other house and said, hey, we're sending off this one at this time, so you send off this one at this time. They're all just doing their thing, setting up fireworks. And then from where we were at, it made this beautiful display across the city.
Yeah.
And it got me reflecting on when we all do the thing that we're supposed to do, that it ends up creating this bigger picture of unity. And not just from the fireworks, but from our daily jobs, that we go in and we serve and we do this thing or that thing, and we may not see the full display that's happening, but someone from the distance is able to see this full display that's being put on. So that gave me a lot of hope of, wow, we can all really work as a team, even when we have no idea that we're working as a team. And the fireworks were hilarious because, as we said, it was not a village that was putting them on. They were people from their yards that were putting them on. So they weren't these high-end fireworks. They're barely getting above the buildings in downtown and exploding and like creating this great thing. But I'm like, man, I wouldn't want to be downtown right now. There's fireworks raining down on your head.
It's so true. And the fireworks are awesome. And there was this moment where, kind of like Dylan said, with the younger generation, I think we can be judgmental in a way of like, oh, they just care about being on their phone or whatever. But there was this little girl, she couldn't have been more than 12 years old. And she kept doing a selfie video of her just spinning around so that the fireworks were behind her. And it was funny because I think her parents might have got annoyed and they were like, get out of people's way. People are trying to take pictures or whatever. But for me, I was watching this girl and I was just so amazed because she just wanted to be part of the beauty. Yeah. She wanted to be encompassed by the beauty because Syracuse, New York is great. A lot of people don't want to travel here at any time of year other than the summer, if they even want to come in the summer. But the 4th of July is magical. I think that there was 40 to 50 different areas that we could see that fireworks were going off. And when you can see that over a city, I think it brings the magic and the beauty back into this place that we call home, but that others may not even care to even look at. It's just like, oh, that other random city, I don't even want to drive to upstate New York. Where for us, it really was just this beautiful experience. And so I'm really glad you shared about the fireworks, because that little girl really inspired me of like, why don't we just want to be encompassed by beauty? Like, we should be trying to be surrounded by it more and more and more. So.
For sure. And she wanted to share it with other people.
Yeah.
So she's taking a video to share it with these other people. And back to your story at the beach, there's another really just pure moment of this girl. She couldn't have been more than 5-6 years old. And she goes to her mom after the emergency situation was taken care of. She goes, Mom, I want to go make friends.
Oh.
And then came back over like 2 minutes later and goes, Mom, I made a friend. Oh. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like, if we could all have that mentality day after day, I'm like, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to go make a friend. Yeah. I don't know who this friend's going to be, but I'm going to go make a friend.
I love that.
It was awesome to see.
We could tell stories and hope stories and inspiring stories and just beautiful things all day, but let's hop into the questions and maybe share some of our stories next time.
Yeah.
So our first question this week is from a listener named Josh. He asked, how important is it to stick to a specific structure of eating, exercise, sleep? And is it something that can be flexible, or should it be like stick to the schedule, plan, commit, never change?
Josh, thank you for that question. I'm going to give the typical answer of it depends, but then Classic. I'll follow up on what it depends on. So it depends on what is your goal and what is the time frame for that goal. So if you have, let's say you have like a 5K coming up a month from now, it's pretty important that you're sticking to your nutrition plan. You're getting enough carbs in, you're getting enough sleep, you're getting enough training, you're building up volume to get ready for that race. Mm-hmm. You know, if it's further out, then there's more wiggle room. So it's going to depend on what's the goal. It's going to depend on what's the thing that's being used. Because what I will say, kind of getting into nutrition a little bit, is that any short-term change in a diet is going to work, right? This is why we see the carnivore diet. People do extremely well on it. We see people do extremely well on a plant-based diet, although they're completely different ends of the spectrum. We see people doing well with just eating raw liver meat. We see people doing well with paleo. We see people doing well with not a sugar diet. We see people doing well with just a sugar diet. So you start to ask the question, how could all of these diets be successful? And the reason is because people are probably on it for such short period of time that any short-term change will happen when you make any change into the system. But if you want to see the long-term impacts of it, then you have to stick with it. Mm-hmm. So then getting into exercise, if you want to be on a good weight loss program, that tends to be losing maybe 1 pound to 2 pounds per week. If you do a crash one where in like 2 weeks you lose 20 pounds, that weight's going to come back and probably come back even further because you didn't regulate metabolism, you didn't make the long-term changes or habit development that was needed for it. So how important is it that you stick to a specific plan? Well, it depends on what the goal is and what that plan is, what you're trying to get from that plan. Back a while ago when this Netflix documentary came out on plant-based diets and how this plant-based diet can change your sports performance and all of these other things that it came up with, I was like, wow, I should try that. And I did for 2 months and I felt great. I felt phenomenal. But then month 3 and 4, I felt absolutely terrible because 1, I wasn't getting enough calories in total. And 2, those first initial months where my body's just adapting to something new and almost detoxing from all the meat that I had beforehand. It doesn't mean that meat was bad. It just means my body was adapting to that change short term, but then long term, I didn't have the things that I needed to actually perform. So back to that question of how important is it to stick with things? It depends on the goal. It also depends on the season of life that you're in. We were on a previous podcast with Jason and Lauren Pack, and they talk about dimmers, which I think is a great way to put it. That, you know, it's hard every week to get 5 days of exercise in. Some weeks you're going to be able to get more. Some weeks you're going to be able to get less. We traveled a lot for the 4th of July. This week is not a 5 exercise week. You know, it's the dimmer. We had to turn that dimmer down a little bit because the dimmer on family and travel was turned up. So I do think you need to allow some fluctuations to happen because that's going to allow you to stay long-term. It's just after that dimmer's down, make sure that it does come back up relatively soon.
I love that. And I look at my personal journey, my personal story. I went from being a vegetarian for 7 years, and those last few years of that having a pretty serious eating disorder. And I was in such a structure, but then when I started going through recovery, I had to stay in a structure for a while, actually. Like my nutritionist was telling me what to eat, when to eat it, committing to only like 15 minutes of very light exercise and prioritizing sleep for the first time in my life. And so I had to stick to that structure for a while in order to help heal. But then when I was on the other side of that healing, I didn't pendulum swing, but I had the freedom to be like, okay, I can be a little loose with this. I can have snacks. I can be excited when I have ice cream again for the first time rather than hating it and hating myself because of having ice cream and things like that. And so then, not that it was a huge pendulum swing, but there was like more freedom where I didn't have to be in this crazy structure. But now I'm more intentional as an athlete and I want to continue to grow as an athlete in a new way. And so I'm kind of more in the middle where I was preparing for a competition and I was pretty strict with what I was doing, but now I'm post-competition, keeping most of those habits. But, you know, we had ice cream basically 2 days in a row in this past week and it was awesome and I loved it. And so definitely like it is like, what are your goals? But then there's also flexibility within it. And I love the analogy of the dimmer. So this next question is from a listener named Corey, and they had kind of like a mental health question. And they asked, in pursuit of better health, some of us endure a pendulum swing and become obsessed with it to the point of it becoming counterproductive. Do you have any insight on this like obsession pendulum swing type thing?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And thank you for submitting it. I think it's really what we see in society as a whole is that we live in this dogmatic society. It has to be this way or it has to be that way. There's no in between. And a quick example I can give of this is the idea of your knees going over your toes. So there's one camp that says knee going over your toes is the best thing that you can be doing for knee health and everyone should be doing it. The other camp says you should never be doing that. That damages your knee cartilage and all these things. And the question that I pose is, why can't we fall in the middle? Because there's a really great time for knees to go over the toes. And there's a time where maybe it's not so great for an individual to have that type of movement. So when we look at these different strategies, these different methodologies, or these different theories that come out, I always beg people to look at the other side of it. So if someone's making this really bold claim, find something that's not in support of it just to get informed on the other side of the story. Once you get both viewpoints, both sides of the story, then you can decide where and when is that going to fit in to whatever strategy may be coming up.
I love that. And kind of going back to the first question, my personal experience typically goes back to my eating habits and things like that. And I remember a season of my life where I became very obsessive about this sort of thing, where I thought gluten-free was the thing that was going to change my life. And so I was gluten-free, sugar-free, and basically any like products that had GMOs in it. Like I did not eat at all. And this was what I thought was at the end of my eating disorder. And this was to help my chronic pain and the inflammation I was feeling. So I had a great doctor tell me, you have to go as clean as possible for the rest of your life. And so I was doing that, but it became obsessive to the point of I was afraid to eat out because I didn't want my body to flare up. If I had a little bit of sugar, literally just a little bit of sugar, I felt so much pain. And I look back and I know my mind was really the thing creating a lot of that. And some people, do need to eat in a certain way, but for me, it became so obsessive. And I'm grateful I'm at a place where I have found balance. And I think that when people are in the obsessive season, we want to give the advice of find balance in between these different things. But I remember when I was in the season, balance just was not even possible. And so do you have any thoughts on, if someone is struggling with the balance aspect, like what is a tangible thing that they could commit to? Because when I think of me, the answer I would give was extend yourself grace and extend the situation grace. Like if you're becoming obsessive, you need to pull back and you need to extend grace to whatever is going on in the environment and in your mind. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on that specifically.
Yeah, a lot of thoughts came up, so I'm going to extrovert them out and see where this goes. I was watching this video with Kobe Bryant the other day, and one thing that he had mentioned in this interview was that emotions, they come, and as much as they come, they go. So when things come up, it is our duty to sit with those emotions and process them and then let them go. But I think sometimes when we're caught in the middle of these things, we forget that idea of, oh yeah, we can let them go. Like they're passing through us. We're not stuck with this emotion. So that's one thought that came up. Another thought that came up, and kind of more of an example, is that whenever we hear this claim that this is the thing that is going to heal you, that is a red flag. Because it's not just this one thing. And in the book, we talk about that in Hope Not Nope. Like we claim that hope is the greatest healing agent available, but to have hope, it's gratitude, forgiveness, sleep, nutrition, community. It's all of these things that accumulate to this umbrella idea of hope. So it's not this one thing. An example here is with diet. I need to eat clean, so I'm going to eat a healthy fat, so I'm eating avocados. But now there's a lot of research showing if I eat that avocado after a stressful meeting, my body digests that as if it's an LDL, which is not a good fat, versus an HDL, which is a good fat. So it's not so much, yes, it matters what you're putting in, but what matters more is what is your stress levels when you're eating that thing, because your body will digest it in a stressful event as if it is a quote unquote bad food versus a quote unquote good food. So if someone's like, hey, to feel better, you need to eat this food, I would say, well, what matters also with that food is when are you eating it? Why are you eating it? And an example of that is, Brandy doesn't like this so much, but if I've had a stressful day, I don't have sugar. And the reason being is because now I'm setting up a conditioning pattern in which I'm rewarding myself or I'm using the sugar as a crutch to de-stress, which isn't a healthy habit to have. So if I have a good day and a happy day and it's like, yeah, let's go get ice cream because I'm feeling good today, my body's going to digest that in a different way compared to going, wow, today was really hard. It was really tough. All these things came up. And then I go have that. My body's going to digest that in a not so positive way. So how do we find balance in all this? Well, we realize that it's not just a thing, it's the things.
Mm-hmm.
But then we can get overwhelmed. And what really helped me 3 years ago was learning about the percent of marginal gains, or the aggregation of marginal gains. If you strive to be 1% better each day, which 1% is not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it started with waking up and making my bed. That was the 1% I strive for. And then I accomplished that. And it was, what's the next 1% I can get better at? What's the next 1%? Over a year, you don't notice too much of a change. Over 2 years, not so much of a change. But at 3 years, you start to notice this exponential gain in one direction if you were getting 1% better versus if you're getting 1% worse. So know that to find balance, it's the small things. It's those little things that add up over time.
I love that. And Corey, I just thank you for that question, because I think there's a lot of people who want balance but don't know how to find it, or they become obsessive and it feels counterproductive, and there's a lot that goes within that pendulum swing. But I think that wisdom is great, of the 1% better every day, because every person can do one thing better. And I remember when I was going through therapy years ago, my doctor told me, not every day is not, and if you can see in a video, my hand is up like over my head. I can't compare the day that's way up here to my low day. Every day is going to be different. You're going to have rough days, you're going to have the best days ever, but within those days you can still have that 1% of, what did I do today to better myself, better the people around me, better my environment? And so thank you for that wisdom.
Yeah, and to that point, another thought that came up from this is that, like you said, you're not going to have, every day is not going to be 100% super smiley face emoji day, but a lot of days can be that way. And the last thought I have on this concept is that if we're turning one obsession into another obsession, we're really not moving forward. We're really just filling that obsession with another distractor. I see it all the time when people are, I'm not going to drink alcohol anymore. So they start drinking like 3 teas a day. It's like, well, is that really better?
Yeah.
That like now you're filling yourself with all this caffeine. Well, I'm not going to drink tea anymore. I'm only going to drink soda. Well, okay, now like that's not great either. So if you're constantly jumping from one obsession to the next obsession, I think there's something more there. I think there's something deeper that's being avoided, that potentially we're using these other things to distract ourselves from that. So then I would challenge, if a person is having that, which is very common to have in society, to ask yourself, why am I jumping from this thing and obsessing to this thing? Is it because I'm not willing to sit with some of these other thoughts or some of these other habits that are really ingrained into me that I can change, and I know I can change, but maybe I'm not willing to?
I love that. So maybe dive in and have a little self-reflection and be kind to yourself in the midst of that. Because I think when we self-reflect, I know for me, in a different season of my life, I would self-reflect, but it would turn into just self-hatred. We don't want that either. Don't become obsessed with hating yourself. That's not the goal. Yeah. But take time to reflect and say, okay, what's the reality of what's going on here? And be kind in that and be compassionate in that, but then see what you can improve moving forward. This last question is from a listener named Megan. And she asked, what advice do you have for someone who is starting their healing journey, but they feel like hope for them personally is foreign or inauthentic?
That's a great question. And thank you, Megan, for writing that in. So the other night we went to the amphitheater and they were showing movies. They were showing Finding Nemo and Luca. Huge Luca fan. I mean, to the point that I quoted Silencio Bruno in the book, because I just love Luca. It makes me tear up every time, especially at the end. I won't spoil any part of it, but great movie. But I'm going to reference Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo is a great movie. I could probably quote the entire thing. So,
do you have your accent, buddy? So we're watching Finding Nemo, and at the end, after the credits, they show the rest of the fish escaping out of the cage. And they get into these bags and they find a way to kind of roll across the road, and they plop into the ocean. They plop into the ocean, and the lead fish, Gil, just has this smile on his face, this satisfaction. that we made it. We got out of this tank that we were stuck in. We got over this obstacle. We've been trying to do this for years. It seemed like we were almost in this hopeless place, and now we've made it. But the funny part is that now they're in the ocean, but they're stuck in plastic bags. So I think the one important point is that, and I love that Megan phrased it as a healing journey, because it really is a journey. You don't just get to one point and then it's done. Like, to be grateful, to keep perspective, to practice forgiveness, it's a weekly, if not daily practice. There's so many different things pulling at us to make us get off of that path that it does make it challenging. You have to make it a priority that I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to practice being grateful. I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to practice seeing the other sides of people's stories. I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to actively listen to the people that I'm working with versus trying to push a certain agenda. So we learned a lot from those fish escaping the tank, but referencing back to before they escaped, how many times did they try to get out of that tank, and how many times did they have failed attempts? And in the video, I'm air quoting failed, because really there's no failures. You just learn a lesson and then you're able to improvise and get better each time. But they had a lot of times to improvise and figure out new strategies. And when they were almost there, they changed the fish tank. So then that one strategy, then it had to alternate to this other strategy. But they held on to hope. And I think what held them on to hope was the vision that they had.
Yeah.
So I think if we're feeling inauthentic about hope, it's likely that you're in that fish tank. You've tried shooting yourself out of the volcano to get out of the tank, and it didn't work. You tried slingshotting out of there, and it didn't work. You tried all these other methods, and it seemed not to work, so you feel defeated. So we see Nemo, we see Gil in their separate parts of the fish tank, really kind of depressed of, I'm stuck here. I can't go anywhere. And that may be what you're feeling like. But they got up, they put another plan into action, and it came to fruition. So I get it. I get feeling stuck in that tank. I get feeling like I can't feel hope. It's inauthentic because I've tried it before. And each time I've tried it, it ends up just being this perceived failure. But the advice I have is to keep going. You have to keep taking action, even when it feels like it's not going to turn into anything. And within that, reflect on, what is your vision? Because those fish wouldn't have kept trying to get out of that tank if they didn't have a vision of what their life would look like once they were out of the tank. Granted, they're now in the plastic bags and they have to figure out how to get out of the bags, but eventually they'll get out of those bags. But they kept moving forward because they knew their vision. So what is your vision? And not what other people have given to you. We spend so much time trying to impress people that really, like, one, physically they may not even be here anymore, and two, it may not even be our plan or what was planned for us to do. So what is your vision, your authentic vision? What were you put here to do? Figure that out first, and then from there, start trying some things. They may work, they may not work, but give it a shot and know that eventually, it's not if it's going to work, it's when. When is it going to work?
And hold out for hope too. And I remember there was a time where I could not think of a vision. I knew I wanted my life to look different, but I was so stuck in my depression that vision was, I literally just could not even imagine what the next day could be like. But in that time, and I agree with Dylan, you shouldn't be listening to other people's visions for your life and plans for your life. You should really pursue the life that you're meant to pursue. However, during that time, I needed to trust the people around me to help me. And I had a friend who challenged me to write 5 things I was grateful for every single day. And I was so mad about that challenge, but I'm a committed, loyal person. And so I did it anyways, even though I was depressed and didn't want to. I remember laying in bed at night being like, dang it, I have to write those 5 things. And it would make me so upset. And that probably went on for like a month of being frustrated about this, but I still committed to the 5 things that I was grateful for every day. And I have this little tiny notebook, and it's probably filled with maybe 4, 5, 6 months of 5 things every single day that I was grateful for. And I look back at that season of my life of being in just such darkness. And then I look to a couple months ago, someone saying that I was the queen of gratitude. And how did I get from that depression to being the queen of gratitude, whatever that even means? But it was having people help me around me, but then also, like Dylan said, holding out for the hope of the vision set before me. I would have never planned that this would be my life because I didn't have big enough vision for what my life could be. But I was able to do the little thing because of the people helping me around me, and that led me to becoming a very, very grateful person. And so if hope feels foreign or inauthentic, or if you can't even fake it till you make it because that is just not your thing, then, like Dylan said, try to find vision. Try to put yourself in a situation where you can just dream for a second. And that feels weird and it feels inauthentic. And like Dylan said, some of those feelings and emotions, they do pass away. And so maybe trust our wisdom. You may not know us, but trust this wisdom of us kind of being on the other side of the healing journey. I mean, the journey still continued for the both of us, but on the other side, I guess, of the start of the healing journey.
Yeah, build momentum. And I'll quote Richard Montanez, who is the creator of Flaming Hot Cheetos, although there's controversy around that. But anyway, his book is a great read, Flaming Hot, very appropriately named. But he talks about his story and his vision and his family's vision, the adversity that he faced. And once he, got to the point that he thought where his life was going to take off, how there was another mountain to climb and another mountain to climb, but he kept going. And in the book, he quotes, "Faith it till you make it." Mm-hmm. And then we have to ask, well, what is faith? Well, faith is taking that first step when you don't really know where the staircase is going to go. You just have to start taking that step, and then that next step, and that next step. Retrospectively, it'll all make sense. All the adversity that you faced, all the obstacles that were very intentionally placed there because you were meant to face them, they'll all start to make sense. And that's where hope will come to fruition.
Yes. So Megan, have hope, have faith, and start this journey. And yesterday when we were watching Luca, Alberto was explaining to Luca how to walk. And he basically said, stick your foot out in front of you, and before you fall, catch yourself. And I think that that's the start of the healing journey, is just catch yourself as you fall, and slowly you'll be running.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that.
So Megan, Corey, Josh, thank you so much for your questions today. We're always looking for more questions. And so head over to our website, hopenotnope.org, where you can submit your questions about health, fitness, life, habits, goals, whatever you're hoping to be answered, we'll answer for you on this podcast. And so head over and ask more questions, and please consider subscribing, liking, sharing with a friend. We really want to get this podcast out to help inspire people with more hope.
Have a great week, and remember, every day is not just a day to become hopeful, it's a day to become hope.